Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise and do powerfully command thee, O Spirit. Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise and do powerfully command.
In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abracast. I'm your host, John Towers. Thank you for tuning in. So, we're put in a precarious position of documenting the end of Western civilization here at the Abracast. So, in the past, we've done 3 episodes on putting 9/11 in context. We forgot about the Freemasons, we forgot about the wizards and the fucking lizard people, and we didn't worry about the directed energy weapons, and we talked about the real life conspiracy and or the circumstances surrounding 9/11 and putting the events in historical context. And every 9/11, I post up the omnibus edition, which is three episodes stitched together. And I just posted that up the other day. So, I mean, obviously you've heard of it. And this evening, what we're going to be doing is part 4. That's right. We're dusting off. We're going to be adding on to the omnibus edition of putting 9/11 in context. And we're going to be talking about, the subsequent war on terror that happened 9/11. We're going to be looking at it through the perspective of the last 20 years, and I think it's going to be interesting. Where a lot of this is going to be various articles that I found. All this stuff's going to be in as much stuff as I can is going to be in the show notes if you want to go through. Some of it's old, some of it's new. One of the things that we're going to find, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early, but one of the things that we're going to find is this pathology. I don't know what a good word for it is. This streak that the current administration and its ilk, I guess, the liberal Democrats, the progressives, however you want to say it, whenever they're in charge of shit, there's this pathology of having to cut and run and leaving people in the dust. And this isn't new. I'm not some kind of, I'm not the only guy that's figured this out and talked about it. It's everywhere. If you're open-minded at all, it's everywhere. I actually did an episode about the living being trapped in Joe Biden's eternal recurrence over this thing, and this is going to add on to it. We're also going to touch base about a couple other things that we've spoken about before. So I just want to remind everybody that on the website, abercast.com, there's a feature topic link where you go and you can find, the 9/11 stuff in here. We've done a lot of episodes on, radical Islam. We've done a lot of episodes on the episode on the episodes on the Quran. We've done episodes on Joe Biden. Specifically, one that is going to just come up in here very briefly is the shoot down of Extortion 17. We did a whole episode on that, so you might want to just tune in and listen to that stuff. But enough so far, enough babbling. Let's get into this thing. What do I got to do first? Okay. I have my Vessel of the Art here mixed up with my Jin Jihad. And I know a great deal about this stuff. I've been doing research on it since, 2005 maybe? Like deep dives into it. I have a book called The Jin Jihad. It's a comic book. It's a graphic novel, but so it just letting you know my credentials just a little bit. Here we go. Let me get lubed up, and then we're gonna go. A timeline of the U.S.-led war on terror. In the wake of the attacks of 9/11, President George W. Bush called for global war on terror, launching an ongoing effort to thwart terrorists before they act. This the backbone of this whole episode is from history.com. So this is from all this. America responds to 9/11. On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked 4 U.S. planes, crashing 2 into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, while a third hits the U.S. Pentagon. Minutes later, a 4th plane targeted to hit the White House. They don't know that. They don't know what it was going to hit. Crashes in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. After passengers attacked the terrorists, the death toll, not including the 9 hijackers, was 2,977. This is a figure you are, I'm sure, familiar with, rounded up to 3,000. September 12th, Bush addresses the nation declaring war and stating the United States of America will use all our resources to conquer this enemy. We will rally the world. We will be patient. We'll be focused. And we will be steadfast in our determination. This battle will take time and resolve, but make no mistake about it. We will win. That was just 20 years ago, dude. September 20th, 2001. In a speech addressing Congress and the nation, Bush announces the war on terror, saying our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. September 25th, 2001, Defense Secretary Donald, you don't know what you don't know, Rumsfeld announces the anti-terror campaign as Operation Enduring Freedom, which, he says, will take years to fight. The following day, Saudi Arabia ends diplomatic ties with Afghanistan's Taliban government, or as Biden plugs likes to say, Taliban, whenever he's allowed to talk. The war on Afghanistan begins October 7th, 2001. Airstrikes. I remember where I was when this happened. I was actually working. I was doing security at I don't remember who was playing a football game. Airstrike. I'll tell you what, man. You want to know what changed the world as far as events security is concerned? 9/11 did. Airstrikes by the United States and Great Britain are launched in Afghanistan as Taliban and Al-Qaeda training camps and targets. What America is tasting now is only a copy of what we have tasted, Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden says in a video statement released the same day. Our Islamic nation has been tasting the same for more than 80 years of humiliation and disgrace. Its sons killed, their blood spilled, its sanctity desecrated. October 19th and 20th, 2001, the ground war begins with special forces striking in Kandahar in the coming weeks. Britain, Turkey, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands, France, and Poland will announce that they will deploy troops into Afghanistan. November 9th, 2001, the Northern Alliance captures Mazar-e-Sharif, a Taliban stronghold. November 13th, 2001, Kabul falls following airstrikes and ground attacks by the United States and the Afghan Northern Alliance. December 6th through 17th, 2001, the Battle at Tora Bora rages in cave complex in eastern Afghanistan's White Mountains. U.S.-led coalition forces attempt to capture Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, but he escapes. December 7th, 2001, Kandahar, the last major stronghold of the Taliban, falls. So now we're going to move to this we're going to move to a part of this heartbreaking article by ZEINA KARAMA called When the Music Stops, Afghans' Happy Place Falls Silent. A few years after the Taliban was ousted in 2001, and with Afghanistan still in ruins, Ahmad Saramist left his home in Melbourne, Australia on a mission to revive music in the country of his birth. The school he founded was a unique experiment in inclusiveness for the war-ravaged nation with orphans and street kids in the student body. It sought to bring a measure of joy back to Kabul. The Taliban had notoriously banned music. Yes, they banned music. All you could listen to are the only thing that's like music that you could listen to were like the call to prayers. February 12, 2002, a video confirms the execution-style death of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, a self-described mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. June 13th, 2002, Hamid Karzai, a favored candidate of the U.S., is elected by traditional Afghan Loya Jiringa Council in a 2-year term as Afghanistan's transitional head of state. In 2004, he becomes Afghan's first democratically elected president. March 1st, 2003, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is captured in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. The Iraq War begins March 19th, 2003. U.S. and coalition forces invade Iraq following intelligence that the country and its dictator Saddam Hussein possessed or were developing WMD, weapons of mass destruction. May 1st, 2003, Bush delivers a speech aboard the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, proclaiming mission accomplished, saying that major combat efforts for the war in Iraq will end the Battle of the Iraq is one victory in a war on terror that began on September 11th, 2001, and still goes on, he says. August 19th, 2003, 23 people, including a top UN official, are killed, 100 wounded after a suicide bomber drives a truck into the UN headquarters in Baghdad. December 13th, 2003, Saddam Hussein, 1,000 points of light, is captured by U.S. soldiers in Adwahar, Iraq. March 11th, 2004, coordinated bombings of 4 commuter trains in Madrid kills 191 people and injured more than 2,000. Islamic militants based in Spain but inspired by Al-Qaeda are considered the prime suspects. July 7th, 2005. The 7/7 bombers, terrorist bombings in the London Underground and atop a double-decker bus kill 52 people and injure more than 700. Documents recovered in 2012 will reveal the attacks were planned by a British citizen working for Al-Qaeda. Saddam Hussein and bin Laden killed. December 30th, 2006, after being sentenced to death by hanging for war crimes and crimes against humanity, Saddam Hussein was executed in Baghdad. June 30th, 2009, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl walks away from his post in Afghanistan and is kidnapped by the Taliban, released in 2014. He is later dishonorably discharged. Well, this is a glossing over of what actually really fucking happened. He didn't just walk away from his post. He defected. He wasn't released. They traded 5 terrorists for him. All right, let's get into it. According to Wiki, he was released on May 31st, 2014 as part of a prisoner exchange for 5 high-ranking Taliban members who are being held at the detention center in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Here we go. 5 freed Gitmo in exchange for Bergdahl in Taliban's political office in Qatar. This is from the AP 2018. Kabul, Afghanistan, 5 members of the Afghani Taliban who were freed from the U.S. military prison in Guantanamo Bay in exchange for captured American Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl have joined the insurgent group's political office in Qatar. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said Tuesday they will now be among the Taliban representatives negotiating for peace in Afghanistan. A sign for some negotiators in Kabul say indicate the Taliban's desire for a peace pact. The verdict is, I guess, still out on that. August 30th, 2010, in Oval Office address, President Barack Hussein Obama declares an end to U.S. combat operations in Iraq. So I have quite a bit to say about this, and I got it in 2 different articles. So here, this first one is called Iraq Troop Withdrawal Was Austin's Failure and Biden's. If you go back to the episode we did not too long ago about the eternal recurrent, being trapped in the eternal recurrence of Joe Biden, we kind of go over the handing off of responsibilities for troop withdrawal from Obama to Biden. And he said, like, Joe, you know Iraq better than anyone. Like, you should handle this. Which means that the people in Joe Biden's organization who are now, secretaries of state and defense and all the brains that maneuvered us so pitifully through this event were also in charge of it. This is Blinken dude. He's wrapped up in all of this. So this is by Eli Lake. Botched diplomacy and strategy by the Obama team in 2011 left the nation vulnerable to the Islamic State. One of the stranger aspects of President-elect Joseph Plugs Biden's selection of retired General Lloyd Austin to be his Secretary of Defense comes in his explanation of why he made the choice. In an essay to The Atlantic, Biden says he chose Austin because of how he oversaw the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 2011 from Iraq, which was a disaster. Pulling that off took more than just the skill and I was going to try to read it like Biden, but I'd be like, pulling that off took toaster muffins, peanut butter, and dog paws, popcorn. Pulling that off took more than just skill and strategy of a seasoned soldier, Biden wrote. It required Austin to practice diplomacy, building relationships with our Iraq counterparts and with our partners in the region. Biden is certainly in a position to know this, as he was Barack Obama's administration's point man in Iraq when he served as vice president. What is puzzling is why Biden would select Austin because of, not in spite of, his role in the U.S. retreat from Iraq. The 2011 decision was a strategic blunder that Biden and Obama reversed in part in 2014 after an Islamic State army had taken Iraq's second largest city and was threatening Baghdad. Again, we are trapped in Joe Biden's eternal recurrence. This is the exact same thing that happened. We just haven't went back in to Afghanistan yet. One big reason why Obama agreed to a full withdrawal of forces from the country was because Austin. Biden and the U.S. Ambassador James Jeffrey failed to get the Iraqi parliament to approve a provision that stipulated U.S. forces remaining in Iraq would not be tried in Iraqi courts. This may seem like a technical detail, but almost all status of forces agreements in foreign countries include such provisions. And I think that's pretty obvious why. Jeffrey explained in a policy paper released after he left his post in Baghdad that Iraq's prime minister and president informed him that the country's parliament would support a small U.S. presence in the country, but would not support the exemption from Iraqi law. After that, the White House announced the full withdrawal. Austin does not deserve all of the blame for the failure. The Obama administration was slow to give a firm number of troops it wanted in Iraq. Throughout 2011, when the administration finally settled on 5,000 Iraqi leaders who were privately supportive of continued U.S. troop presence, worried that Obama's commitment was not serious. Also, the administration failed to cajole the Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to share power with the more pro-American party that had won most of the votes in Iraq's 2010 election. The full withdrawal from Iraq became a problem for U.S. interests soon after the last troops left. In several ways, for example, the absence of U.S. military presence meant that there was no credible force inside of Iraq to deter regional rivals from using its airspace. Iraq soon began sending flights through Iraq into Syria to resupply the regime and its allied militias there. Maliki, who also became emboldened after the U.S. forces left, he tried to have one of his vice presidents arrested and declared a kind of martial law in Anbar province, where the U.S. had years earlier persuaded Sunni tribal leaders to switch sides and to fight al-Qaeda. Eventually, Obama had to send forces back to Iraq. And later, Syria. Austin was by then promoted to commander of the Central Command, which encompassed the Middle East, and he helped devise the outlines of the military strategy and ended up defeating the Islamic State after Donald Trump became president. It was a small contingent of U.S. special operators mixed with air power and local forces comprised primarily of ethnic Syrian Kurds. Austin, though, never approved the looser rules of engagement that many military analysts credit with helping turn the tide of the Islamic State. It's probably looser rules of engagement. Sorry about that. None of this is to say that Austin's role in the U.S. withdrawal in 2011 is disqualifying. All right. He should have been disqualified. He's a fucking nightmare. Skipping to the end, Biden's plea in the Atlantic to support his nominee is troubling nonetheless. With the 2011 withdrawal from Iraq was an error forced by failure of diplomacy. One would hope Biden learned from his experiences. His defense of Lloyd Austin suggests he has not. May 2nd, 2011, Osama bin Laden is killed by U.S. Special Forces during a raid of Abbottabad, Pakistan compound, June 22nd, 2011, in televised address, Obama announces withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan and a handover of power to Afghani security forces by 2014. August 2011, extortion 17. 38 service members are killed when helicopters they are aboard come under fire. This month becomes the deadliest ever for U.S. forces in Afghanistan, with 66 fatalities. This is the shoot down of extortion 17 is linked pretty solidly, in my opinion, directly to Joe Biden. And here is more unpacking of the mess from the withdrawal of Iraq in 2011. This is from Joe Biden's Problem. The former vice president has a long and complicated, and some would say checkered history with Iraq, and here is the full story. This is by Tara Golshan and Alex Ward. The U.S. withdraws troops from Iraq, and ISIS rises. In 2011, Malaki knew the U.S. was desperate. It wanted to get out. It wanted... This just briefly goes over the SOFA, or the thing that we were talking about how they would be legitimately there, but they would be immune from Iraqi law. The premier also knew that Biden believed he delivered the desired agreement. Malaki wants us to stick around because he does not want to see a future in Iraq. He does not see a future in Iraq otherwise, Biden said during October 2010 video conference with advisors. I'll bet you my vice presidency, Malaki will extend the SOFA, which he didn't. Malaki drove a hard bargain, consistently saying that he wouldn't grant immunity to a single American soldier, which derailed negotiations. One theory for this hardline stance was former U.S. diplomat in Iraq, Barbara Leaf, who posited to The Atlantic in June that he started anticipating the end of the U.S. troops and an end of people telling him what to do. Whatever the reason, the troop agreement, again, one was the main reason Biden and the rest of the U.S. had scrambled to help organize an Iraqi administration they thought would be friendly to Washington, didn't come through. The lack of a deal forced Obama's hand. In October 21st, 2011, when he ordered the roughly 45,000 troops in Iraq out of the country by year's end, when with more freedom to do what he wanted, Malaki, for the next few years, continued and in many cases deepened his sectarian rule. He built a Shia-dominated sectarian state, and he refused to take steps to accommodate Sunnis, who already felt disenfranchised by their laws. Sunni protesters used anti-terrorism laws, mass arrests of Sunni civilians, etc. Malaki also made political alliance with violent Shia militias, infuriating and terrifying Sunnis. ISIS cannily exploited the anger and the fear to recruit new fighters from the disaffected Sunni communities. With the U.S. distracted by the Arab Spring, the growing civil war in Syria, Obama's administration failed to adequately respond to the clear upswell in the terrorist group's ranks by late 2013. I think criticism of us is that we don't see a problem is unfair. Anthony Blinken, a top Obama official and now Biden campaign advisor, told The Atlantic in the June article, it's fair to say that we were not effective in dealing with it before the fact. So maybe we're trapped in Blinken's eternal recurrence. When the U.S. did eventually respond, Biden proved instrumental in coordinating it. The U.S. sent warplanes to Iraq to target ISIS militants and told Iraqi leaders that the more assistance would come if Malaki stepped aside. The sense was that Malaki's leadership would only make the problem worse. Despite struggling to stay in power, eventually Malaki stepped down. Of course, for some time it was too little, too late. The U.S. headed back to Malaki and withdrew troops that could have helped avert disaster. The vice president was also a key player in developing the strategy touted by U.S. generals ever since to work with local allies to fight ISIS on the ground and retake the territory it had captured in Iraq and Syria. All right. September 11th, 2012. September 11th, 2012, 9:40 p.m. local time, members of the Ansar al-Sharia attacked the American diplomatic compound in Benghazi, resulting in the deaths of both United States ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens, and the U.S. Foreign Service Information Management Officer, Sean Smith. This is right from Britannica, the Benghazi attacks. Assaults on the U.S. diplomatic compound in a nearby CIA annex in the city of Benghazi on September 11th and 12th, 2012, which resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya, the first violent death of a U.S. ambassador since 1988. The incident sparked controversy and ignited a political firestorm in the United States. The Libyan uprising that began in February 2011 continued to escalate. U.S. envoy John Christopher Chris Stevens first arrived in Benghazi in April 5th, 2011, in an outreach mission to the Libyan rebels. He was appointed U.S. ambassador to Libya in May 2012 and was based in Tripoli. September 10th, 2012, he went to the U.S. compound in Benghazi to continue his work on a special mission there, including connecting with local contacts and filling staffing gaps. On the night of September 11th, about 150 Islamic militants associated with an al-Qaeda affiliate stormed the compound and set fire to the main building. Stevens informed technology specialist Sean Smith and a security officer hid in a safe room. By the time the rescuers arrived, Smith had died of asphyxiation and Stevens could not be found in the heavy smoke before the rescue team was driven out. Stevens was later recovered by local Libyans and taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. The second and third attacks occurred at a nearby CIA compound. The second attack at about midnight caused no casualties. The third attack occurred early in the morning. The compound was hit by mortar fire. 2 security agents were killed. Soon afterwards, a local Libyan militia friendly to the United States arrived to escort the remaining Americans to the airport. So the reaction in the investigation, let's see. There are certain things that I'm going to be looking for here to see if they pleasantly omit them, like they omitted the way that Ambassador Stevens was killed. He was actually killed. Well, I don't know if this is what killed him, but one of the things that happened to him is he was sodomized with a cattle prod. That's no bullshit. I'm not just making that up for hyperbole. That's what fucking happened to the guy. Reactions and investigations. The U.S. government. Well, that's what I heard anyway. The U.S. government. I'm not laughing at that. That's awful and it's terrible or whatever. And whatever. So on and so forth. It's terrible. You always, never want anyone to be left behind. Some of the things that they don't talk about in this article is that they had QRF forces, quick reaction forces that were handy. They had air support readily available to them. Fucking jets move very fast. They had air support ready. There was QRF forces in the area. They had drones that they didn't use. They were forbade to use. So they omit all of that stuff, and that's why I'm spending so much time talking about that here. It's because I kind of breezed past Benghazi on the Eternal Recurrence of Joe Biden episode, but it's here. The people in power that were making the decisions were comfortable stranding these CIA folks and the, this ambassador who, was a true believer. Like, he believed in his mission. Another thing that this doesn't talk about is what the CIA was actually doing there. And it's interesting because it's part of this eternal recurrence. It's part of this rhyme that is going through all of these items that we're talking about. The fact that we wound up funding ISIS. The fact that the real reason the CIA was there, or part of what the CIA's mission was doing there in Libya, was buying back arms that they had and that fell into the wrong hands. There in Syria, and this is the same rhyme. This is the same eternal recurrence that we see with everybody talking about this $82.7 billion worth of equipment and stuff that we left behind. And I know people are out there saying, no, they poured sand in the gas tanks. You still can't fucking use them. That's not the way it's done. They should have bombed it from outer fucking space. Like, they should have destroyed it all if they couldn't destroy each. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyhow. The U.S. government began to investigate the incident. Initial remarks from the officials were vague and at times seemed contradictory. In the days following the attacks, officials in the Obama administration reported that the incident was related to demonstrations on the same day that occurred outside the U.S. Embassy in Cairo after an Egyptian American had produced and posted anti-Islam video on YouTube. But no evidence of similar protests in Benghazi could be substantiated, and other evidence emerged suggesting the attacks were premeditated act by an Al-Qaeda affiliated group, Ansar al-Sharia. Several investigations into the incident faulted insufficient bureaucratic measures responsible for the failure to prevent and respond properly to the attacks. In 2012, U.S. presidential election loomed. Ongoing Secretary of State Hillary Clinton assumed a responsibility for the bureaucratic failures as head of the Department of State and implemented all 29 institutional reforms. She did not take responsibility for it, remember? Famously, she said, "What difference does it make? What difference does it make?" Various congressional committees conducted their own investigation. The final investigative report of the attacks was released nearly 4 years later in the summer of 2016. December 28th, 2014, the war in Afghanistan officially ends, though Obama states 10,800 U.S. troops will remain. January 28th, 2019, the U.S. and Taliban leaders work towards an agreement for the withdrawal of the 14,000 troops in who remain in Afghanistan. So a lot of hay has been made about this agreement. And, initially Joe said, well, I inherited that agreement. I inherited that deal from Trump. Trump had this deal, and when he left, this was the one thing of Trump's that I could not alter in any way. I reversed this stance on the economy. I reversed his doctrine on the border. I reversed all of his decisions and choice makings on pipelines and drilling. I reversed and changed everything, but I couldn't change this just one thing. But the problem with that is that Trump changed the agreement. He had a conditions-based agreement, and I know everyone's probably sick of hearing this. I don't know if you're sick of hearing it or not, but the part of the condition-based agreement was not anybody could be attacked, while we're withdrawing. And a couple of days later, the Taliban started assassinating Afghani political people. And Trump changed this agreement 3 or 4 days after they came to it, and he bombed the fuck out of them. And he was like, I told you not to hurt anybody while we're working on withdrawing. So Trump even changed the agreement that they had. So in the early days of this thing, a couple weeks ago, when Biden's like, "Hey, we were stuck with this agreement," he wasn't stuck. I mean, the agreement that Trump originally struck with him is to withdraw in May. So, I mean, no one was really sticking to the agreement. The Taliban wasn't, because they were out there whacking political opponents. Trump wasn't honoring it. Well, I guess Trump was honoring it because he was bombing the fuck out of them when they were assassinating people, and he didn't pull out by May, the time of the agreement. Anyhow, you can, go to Fox or whatever to hear all about that if you're interested in it. That's just my 2 bits out of it. So now here we get to what actually happened. I don't even want to say the climax, because I believe that this is just looking at history, looking at what happened after the Soviets left Afghanistan, looking to what that spelled out for us, that we revisited, we talked about ad nauseum on those 9/11 in context episodes from a couple years ago. We know that this isn't over, and we know that we are not in a better place than we were a month ago. We just know it. So let's see. Let's keep our eye on the ball, and let's talk about the fall of Kabul. A 20-year mission collapses in a single day. President Ashraf Ghani flees Afghanistan as Taliban sweeps into the city to seize control of the country. This is from The Guardian. Obviously, this was just written a short time ago. The final collapse of the 20-year Western mission to Afghanistan took only a single day, as Taliban gunmen entered the capital, Kabul, on Sunday. President Ghani fled the country. The American abandoned its embassy in panic. Even the militants find themselves surprised by the speed of the takeover. Co-founder Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar admitted in a video statement in the evening. Now, the group faces the challenge of ruling. He added, they are expected to proclaim a new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan soon. Surprisingly, many in Kabul do not trust promises made by the former insurgents of an amnesty for their old enemies, and those, like women's rights activists who sought a different future for Afghanistan. The airport was mobbed with thousands of people desperate to escape. In the evening, they flooded onto the runway, halting all air traffic, in a deeply humiliating scene for the Biden administration. Less than a month before the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on America, smoke spiraled from the embassy compound as staff hastily destroyed documents before a final group took down the Stars and Stripes flag and headed to the airport by military helicopter. It was clear from early Sunday that the second era of the Taliban rule had effectively begun. Taliban commanders started the day so confident of victory that after their fighters surrounded the capital, they ordered them to stay outside the city and wait. Our forces are not entering Kabul city. We want a peaceful transfer of power, said spokesman Suhail Shahina. With the surrender apparently inevitable, Afghanistan government forces melted away. Looting broke out, and hours later, the Taliban claimed their men were needed to restore order. So what we now know happened here, and right between this sentence and the last sentence, is that the Taliban reached out to the White House. The Taliban reached out to the White House, and they were like, yo, it's living hell in Kabul. Either you take control of the city and calm everybody down, or we're going to take control of the city and calm everybody down. And the White House said, nope, it's cool. You guys can take care of it. Can you fucking believe that? I'm at all in this. I can't even believe that. So they moved in, not as fighters, but as policemen, presenting themselves as the government in waiting. By evening, the Taliban had seized the ARG, the presidential palace. That is Afghanistan's historic seat of power. It is expected to be used to declare a new Islamic emirate more than 2 decades after the group had established the first one. The TV footage showed Taliban fighters roaming its rooms and taking down flags to replace with their own standard. Afghans with no option to leave had raced home to destroy evidence of Western or government links when they realized the Taliban were arriving. Women without burqas searched for shops where they could buy them. Even hospitals were closed, with at least one desperate woman forced to give birth at home with a doctor she begged to attend. In parks and other open areas, people who had fled the Taliban's advance in other parts of Afghanistan huddled in tents, fearful of a future they had tried and failed to escape. The United Nations Refugee Agency says more than 550,000 people in Afghanistan have left their homes due to the conflict since it started this year. Shaheen, a Taliban spokesman, had promised amnesty for those who worked for the now fallen government, or its Western nations inviting them, though probably only the men, to serve under Taliban rule. We once again invite them all to come and to serve the nation of the country, he said. But it was an offer viewed with skepticism by many. Areas seized by the group, there have been credible reports of reprisal killings, executions of surrendering soldiers, women forced from their jobs at gunpoint, barred from education, and forced into marriage by militants. Imagine one day you're just going about your business, you're going to school, you got a job. It's great. You're a woman and you have some shit going on in your life. And then all of a sudden someone flips a switch and now you have to be you have to live under the rule of fucking 7th century fucking cavemen. Like, it's fucking, it's depressing. It's depressing, dude. I hate it. The remnants of the Afghan government traveled to Qatar to meet Taliban representatives in a bid to win assurances on a peaceful transfer of power, treatment of refugees, and a promise of ban on reprisals. But the U.S. mandate that once aimed to rebuild Afghanistan has been reduced to trying to get all the staff, Afghan allies who made the sometimes random cut out to the country before the Taliban takeover. All other Western embassies were already operating only out of the airport at the insistence of the U.S. Their buildings across town stood largely empty, although diplomats for Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and other countries that had been part of the NATO mission remained in their compounds. The exodus of those who would get out began early after the insurgents captured the eastern city of Jalalabad, the last major center held by the government in the nearby border crossing with Pakistan. By evening, Ghani was reportedly in Tajikistan. In a post on Facebook, he acknowledged the Taliban's military victory, and he left to avoid fighting in Kabul that would have caused a flood of bloodshed. The Taliban have won the judgment of their swords and guns and are now responsible for the honor, property, and self-preservation of their countrymen, Ghani wrote. That doesn't seem good. Former President Hamid Karzai, in contrast, shared a video of himself with his daughters promising to stay in Kabul. He is part of the newly formed Coordination Council of Afghan leaders, which will meet with the Taliban and manage the transfer of power. There was anger at the flight of a man who just the days earlier had been on national TV promising to reorganize the army. Ghani sold the country to the Taliban, said civil servant Carmen Jamali. I trusted him, I voted for him, and he is a failed leader. And there's a lot of that going around, buddy. There's a lot of, I'll say Ghani apologized, where their thing was like, well, look, Biden and the Americans promised some air support. They promised support with the jets and ammo and all of this stuff, and all of that evaporated, which is why they're saying this guy got the fuck out of Dodge. It was untenable. It was an untenable situation. How, great, we equipped the army and the Air Force, the Afghani Air Force, but they didn't have people to repair their airplanes. They didn't have fuel to fill them up. They didn't, what are they going to do? As the Taliban approached, there had also been fears of street-to-street fighting, a reprisal of a brutal civil war that ripped Afghanistan apart in the 90s and reduced Kabul to ruins. So some welcomed his departure despite trepidation about what would come next. Imagine if he fought against the Taliban. How many lives would be taken and how many innocent civilians would be killed, said Hadi, university student. Considering that all provinces are under the control of the Taliban now, it was the only way to decrease violence temporarily. The Taliban's almost bloodless seizure of the city, the capital city, came after a lightning 11-day offensive on the cities across Afghanistan. They had already seized power in most of rural Afghanistan, along with key border crossings, in a campaign that began in May. And this month they moved into urban areas nationwide in force, splintering and demoralizing Afghan forces. On the Friday, they captured the second and third largest cities, southern Kandahar and western Herat. And on Saturday, the northern stronghold of Mazar-i-Sharif fell. It then seemed a question of when, rather than if, the Taliban would take Kabul. And even so, the speed of Sunday's collapse was stunning. A U.S. intelligence estimate just last week had said Kabul could hold out for at least 3 months. Remember Biden saying, no, it's not even inevitable that they're going to take Kabul. I mean, we bought them, their army is massive. It's not even a done deal. A fucking day. It came almost exactly 2 decades after the international coalition led by Washington and London triumphantly toppled the Taliban in December 2001, seemingly co-signing their caliphate to history. Wrong. Both in the UK and US politicians tried to cast their long missions as an anti-terror one that would continue. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, asked about the situation in Afghanistan, said in a TV interview, "It is very important that the West collectively should work together to get over the new government, be it by the Taliban or anyone else. Nobody wants Afghanistan wants to be a breeding ground for terror." But the West for years also laid out an explicit mission to support democracy and human rights. And most of those gains are expected to be swept away. The Taliban have been clear that they are fighting for an austere interpretation of Islam, which includes particularly severe restrictions on women and girls. Over the years of peace talks brokered by U.S. Taliban negotiators have promised to respect women's rights under Islam. That's hilarious. There are no women's rights under Islam. But refuse to be drawn on details, and in areas they control, women already have limited education, work, and freedom of movement. In Kabul, all this is heartbreaking. In Kabul, shops had started erasing photographs of women in wedding dresses, and women were bracing for a very different life. I have felt very sad today. It's unbelievable for me that the Taliban were back in Kabul, says Hawa. They will not respect our freedom. Hawa knows what's going on. It's crazy. Next, if you're looking for something to do a Google search on, I don't know, it's easy to, Afghan in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and maybe 70s. There's some websites out there that post pictures of them. And you could see, man, it's just the same thing as what happened in Iran. Is like, they were like modern. They had these hot, Afghani chicks in like little mini skirts and stuff walking around, and you're like, look at this. And then you look at everybody now and you're like, oh shit, what the fuck happened? This is what happened. Planes, guns, night vision goggles, the Taliban's new U.S.-made war chest by Idrees, Patricia, Zengerle, and John Landay. August 19. This was from Reuters. About a month ago, Afghanistan's Ministry of Defense posted on social media photographs of 7 brand new helicopters in Kabul delivered by the United States. They'll continue to see steady drumbeat of the kind of support going forward, says U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters a few days later at the Pentagon. In a matter of weeks, however, the Taliban had seized most of the country as well as any weapons and equipment left behind by fleeing Afghan forces. The video showed the advancing insurgents inspecting long lines of vehicles, opening crates of brand new firearms, communication gear, and even military drones. Everything that hasn't been destroyed is the Taliban's now, says one U.S. official speaking on the condition of anonymity, told Reuters. Currently, the former U.S. official says there's concern those weapons... Current and former U.S. officials say there is concern those weapons could be used to kill civilians, be seized by other militant groups such as the Islamic State to attack the U.S. interests in the region, or even be potentially handed over to adversaries, including China and Russia. It's a good thing that we don't have anyone. It's the head of the free world that doesn't owe anything to China or Russia. I mean, you can't even make this up. Joe Biden's administration is so concerned about the weapons that it's considering a number of options to pursue. The official said launching airstrikes against the large equipment didn't happen, such as helicopters didn't happen, has not been ruled out, it won't happen, but there is concern that it would antagonize the Taliban at the time the United States' main goal is evacuating people. They should have evacuated people before they pulled their military out. The fact that they are worried about antagonizing the Taliban is humiliating and embarrassing. Another official said that while there are no definitive numbers yet, the current intelligence assessment was that the Taliban were believed to control more than 2,000 armored vehicles, including Humvees, and up to 40 aircraft, potentially including UH-60 Blackhawks, Scout attack helicopters, and Scan Eagle military drones. Well, we know that they have at least one Black Hawk, because apparently they were hanging somebody off of one the other day. And also, as far as this 2,000 armored vehicles are concerned, I'm trying to figure out how to get there, because I want an APC, dude. I want an M113 Armored Personnel Carrier, A3. I want it, and I want it so fucking bad. I've already seen Taliban fighters armed with U.S.-made weapons they seized from Afghan forces. This poses a significant threat to the United States and our allies. Representative Michael McCall, the top Republican on the U.S. House of Representatives, I don't even care what party he's in. everyone should be talking about this. More like trophies. The speed in which the Taliban swept across Afghanistan is reminiscent of the Islamic State militants taking weapons from U.S.-supplied Iraqi forces who offered little resistance in 2014. Between 2002 and 2017, the United States gave the Afghan military an estimated $28 billion in weaponry, including guns, rockets, night vision goggles, and even small drones for intelligence gathering. The aircraft, like the Black Hawk helicopters, have been most visible sign in the U.S. military assistance and were supposed to be the Afghan military's biggest advantage over the Taliban. Between 2003 and 2016, the United States provided Afghan forces with 208 aircraft, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office. In the last week, many of those aircraft were most useful for Afghan pilots to escape the Taliban. One of the U.S. officials said that between 40 and 50 aircraft had been flown to Uzbekistan by Afghani pilots seeking refuge. Even before taking power in Kabul over the weekend, the Taliban had started a campaign of assassinating pilots. Some planes were in the United States for maintenance and will stay. Those en route to Afghan forces will instead be used by U.S. military to help evacuation from Kabul, which isn't happening. Currently, the former officials say that while they are concerned about the Taliban having access to the helicopters, the aircraft require frequent maintenance and many are complicated to fly without extensive training. So hold on for just one fucking second, because what was I watching? I was watching a documentary and they start talking about this kid who taught himself how to fly a fucking jumbo jet. And he hijacked a fucking jumbo jet, and he was flying on the horizon in like California or somewhere like that, and he was like doing like loop-de-loops, all this shit that no one knew that these fucking airplanes could do, or I mean, maybe they knew theoretically they could do them, but no one's ever seen him fucking do these things before. And he's just like, yeah, you know, I got an airplane, I got a simulator at home on my PC, and I just taught myself how to do this. And he's doing all these fucking like barrel rolls and shit. He wound up crashing the plane and committing suicide. But just think about that when you hear this. The aircraft require frequent maintenance and are complicated to fly without extensive training. What? Ironically, the fact that our equipment breaks down so often is a lifesaver here, a third official says. So I have something to say about this as well. Is when people hear the words military grade, they get like jacked. They're like, oh, it's military grade? That must mean it's really good. Well, in some cases that is true. Military stuff requires a lot of maintenance though. But think about it this way, bro. When I was in the Army in the 90s, in units, in my motor pool, where I had an M113A3, I signed for it. I was responsible for it. I did maintenance on it. I drove it like a lunatic. But in my motor pool, other units or other components of the company I was in had Vietnam-era tanks that they still used. It was still part of our stuff. We would take them on field problems. You would just see this fucking 1960s era tank just roll right by you. So the fact that it needs maintenance, you know, that's true. But if you keep up with it, it will last forever. Think about AK-47s. So the Taliban got their AK-47s and all this stuff off of, dead Soviets in the 80s. They're still fucking using them, bro. They're still fucking using them. Retired U.S. Army General Joseph Votel, who oversaw U.S. military operations in Afghanistan, the head of the U.S. Central Command from 2016 to 2019, said the most high-end hardware captured by the Taliban, including the aircraft, was not equipped with sensitive technology. I have news for you. The night vision goggles are sensitive technology. You are not allowed to own a pair of, quote, military grade, quote, unquote, night vision goggles because it's a game changer. You ever listen to like a U.S. military, like, or hear an old soldier telling stories about Afghanistan or about Iraq or Ramadi or anything like that, and they'll say, we owned the night. The reason they owned the night is because they had night vision goggles. They wouldn't come out of their homes in the middle of the night because they couldn't. They couldn't. As soon as they start fucking around. Anyhow, so it's not just like trophies like this guy's saying. Oh, wait, hold on. There's a whole paragraph about what I just said. Fighting at night. There is a more immediate concern about some of these easier-to-use weapons and equipment, such as night vision goggles. Since 2003, the United States have provided Afghan forces with at least, 600,000 infantry weapons, which include M16s, 162,000 pieces of communication equipment. That's another thing that is a game changer, is the ability to coordinate. And that's what communication equipment, that's what these radios and stuff will do. And 16,000 night vision goggle devices. The ability to operate at night is a real game changer. Okay, I'm just going to skip this since I already kind of went through all this stuff. And I know we're running a little bit long. I still have some stuff to get through. Should I keep going? When the music stops, Afghan happy place falls silent. This is the other half of the article by ZEINA KARAMA. Last week, we watched in horror from his home. This is that music teacher that moved from Melbourne back to Afghanistan to start a music school. Images of the Taliban taking over the Afghan capital, capping a lightning offensive that restored the religious militia to power and stunned the world. Sarmat's two mobile phones haven't stopped ringing since. Many of the calls are from panicked students asking him what will happen next. Will the school be closed? Will the Taliban outlaw music again? Are their treasured instruments safe? And I'm heartbroken, Sarmat told the Associated Press. It was so unexpected and so unpredictable. It was like an explosion, and everyone was caught by surprise, he said of the Taliban takeover. Sarmas had left Kabul on July 12th for a summer holiday, never imagining that just a few weeks later, the whole project and everything he'd worked for the past 20 years would be endangered. He's terrified for his 350 students and his 90 faculty, many of whom have already gone into hiding. Reports of Taliban searching for adversaries door to door have fanned their worries. We are all very fearful about the future of music, and we are all very fearful about our girls and our faculty, he said. Sarmas, who spoke in a Zoom interview, requested that additional details about the students in the school not be published because he did not want to endanger them. In a sign of what the future holds, radio and TV stations stopped broadcasting music, except for Islamic songs. So the last bit I have here is regarding the new cabinet, I guess, of the Taliban. Headliners get key posts in the Taliban government. They've announced an interim government in Afghanistan declaring the country as an Islamic state. So just in the way of wrapping this up, I'm just going to skip through here. They're all entirely male. Senior Taliban figures, some of whom are notorious for attacks on U.S. forces over the last 2 decades. It'll be led by Mullah Mohammed Hassan Akhund, one of the movement's founders, who is on a UN blacklist. The interior minister is the feared FBI wanted leader of the Haqqani military group Surat Juduin Haqqani. The Taliban seized control of most of Afghanistan 3 weeks ago. Ministers told to implement Islamic law. So the gist of it is one of these guys, like 5 of them were held in Gitmo, and we gave them up. We let them go out of Gitmo. Another one of these guys has like a $5 million bounty on his head for information regarding his killing or his capture because he's such a bad actor. So I guess with that, we'll get going. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry I ran a little bit long, but I thought it was important to do a part 4 to add to the 9/11 in context episodes. So yeah. So I'm John. This has been the Abercast. Check out abercast.com, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books. Take control of your destiny. Understand your past, put your present in context, and know your future with a twist. Check out the Abercast Tarot Card Deck. Your body is your temple. So let's make sure you got a badass t-shirt on it. Variety of cool occult themed t-shirts. And other merch like stickers, wall art, mugs, and more. Welcome to the Red Archive. Get access to over 50 hours of archived episodes. More bonus audio. Additional exclusive content. All this for only $1 a month. Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at abercast.com.